Hello, this is editing Fabiola. I believe some of this audio might be missing. We were trying to experiment with other recording sites, and this one apparently did not fully record, but there is enough for an episode. But yeah, just so you guys know.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now I'm back, and I think I've started recording. Should be fine.
Yeah, it says on air.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right.
We're on the air.
Welcome back to Skipping Camp. Thank you for joining us as a guest again. I didn't say that yet.
I'm so happy to be back. I get to talk about things I like here, so
yeah, I love every new piece of media that guests bring, because truly I would have not, I don't think, ever have watched what we're going to talk about today without your recommendation.
I came in thinking oh, this is surely the most accessible of Ryan Trecartin's films, and then having just rewatched it, I was like, oh, I threw a flaming curveball at you guys. I can only imagine you're just like if you show that to the average person, they're like, what the fuck am I watching?
Thankfully, we went to film school, so I've seen about this weird.
And I just got out of a semester of which 2/3 of my classes were experimental classes, basically. So, yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, this is the ultimate sort of form of experimental, where it's just I don't know, I would describe it's if you put visuals to if the way 100 gecs sounds is what Ryan Trecartin's films are or like a Sophie song, if you turned that if you distilled that into visuals and moving images, or it's just being hit in the head with a BlackBerry with MySpace installed on it in the year 2008, or Fabiola, as you said, if David Lynch was locked in a room with nothing but 2000s reality television.
Yeah, that was my Letterboxd review.
Yeah. That's a much better description than me just going, I am overwhelmed with images and sound.
It's a bit much.
But I see the camp. I immediately see the camp.
Oh god, yeah. Yeah, should I just say, just straight up, I went advanced level camp for you guys. And I brought to the table Ryan Trecartin's Center Jenny, which is from 2013, now a decade old, which is wild to think about. And I've watched a good chunk of Ryan Trecartin films. Most of these are stuff that was shown in art galleries, so these aren't commercially or theatrically distributed films. These are first and foremost art pieces, and made to see in a museum of contemporary art or something, with installations around it. But I picked this one specifically because I think it's probably his best known feature, if only because it has a handful of name recognizable stars. You got Aubrey Plaza in the mix, Aaliyah Shawkat, Jenna Malone from The Hunger Games and a couple other people. And again, yeah, upon rewatching it, I was just like, damn, I couldn't have thrown you guys like a Family Finds Entertainment or something like a little earlier and maybe a little less dense, but
This was fun.
that's the thing.
I'm so here
Trecartin
for
is so
it.
dense.
I have to ask before like getting
Yeah.
into the backstory of you say it's Ryan Trecartin? How do you say
Ryan
that?
Trecartin. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm notoriously the one who cannot pronounce shit. Like I had a faux pas mispronouncing GeoCities as Geocities. So I'm fingers crossed it's Ryan Trecartin. I've also heard it pronounced as tree. See, I'm already like mumbling my own words, but I'd be like really disappointed if it's like pronounced weirdly or something. But for all intents and purposes, it's Ryan Trecartin.
Well, okay. My question for you is
Yeah.
maybe to lead us into this is how did you discover his work?
Letterboxd.
Oh.
So there's, I forget the specific mutual. I think it was in her like probably second to center Jenny, Ryan Trecartin's other best known. It's like his first feature film was a film he released a couple years before this called IB Area, which is very, very much the same stylistically, if not like a little bit more visually chaotic. A movie that defies explanation or description, much like Center Jenny does, but she really loved IB Area, and I had just seen like a lot of my other sort of Letterboxd mutuals mentioning it and talking about it, and it was like this mysterious weird thing that like I heard described as like MySpace on acid, or if you downloaded like the YouTube algorithm into your brain or something, just like chaos, like ADHD cinema. I forget if that was I'd have to check my Letterboxd log, but I think that or one of his other shorts might have been the first thing of his I'd seen. And it was very much kind of like, and I think this is the case for a lot of people, like an acquired taste. And then as soon as you sort of like open yourself up to it, and I think for me, especially having grown up sort of became like an internet native around the like time of like 2004 2008, and that's very much where a lot of Ryan Trecartin's like aesthetics kind of live, where he really started like crafting his style in those specific like the aughts, as you say. That it's like one of those things that like even though the aesthetics are complete chaos and like collage, like I can pull a lot of different sort of like social media and like late 2000s sort of images and senses to it. Like it very much it very much invokes sort of the feeling of being like 14 and on MySpace in a weird way, which I know MySpace was a little before your time, but that was like in middle school, like that was the big thing. Like as soon as or middle school and like high school, early high school. I think by the time I started high school, it was MySpace was done. But yeah, it kind of connected with me on that way. And then Center Jenny is the Ryan Trecartin film I think I really enjoyed the most. I don't know, it feels like it's a little weirdly more polished, and I think that's probably just because he's got Aubrey Plaza and like Aaliyah Shawkat and like some notable like names and faces in the mix, even though half the time you can't even visually tell who they are because they got just the crazy insane like I want to say like prescient of like Snapchat or Instagram filters or like makeup on.
Oh, that's the word I wrote down was like airbrush, like Photoshop.
Yeah, like it's especially in Center Jenny, I noticed on this rewatch, like a lot of sort of like silvery, sort of like face paint, almost just like they, grease themselves up in like highlighter and these very harsh, like dark contours. Like it very much like I'm watching and I'm like, God damn it, did Ryan Trecartin and Lizzie Fitch like anticipate filters? Like it's on rewatch. I'm putting this in the prescient cinema canon.
Go ahead.
To me, a lot of just the faces and the makeup work was really reminiscent to an AI rendering of a person, but it's done practically. Like that's what a lot of the makeup reminded me of.
I was amazed by like, I think I wrote down like it's beautiful in a way that's unnatural. Of this like glow and this smoothness and these colors that felt very alien, and that was the word I was using before. I was like, wait, they're talking about not being human.
I wrote down a couple of because the other sort of like big takeaway from Ryan Trecartin films is it's as if like if you fed an AI program like the script to like Mean Girls or Heathers and had it like generate quotes. Like you get like there's like probably my favorite line in the entire movie is I can't remember the name of the actor, but it's one of Ryan Trecartin's like frequent collaborators. Just says, "I miss capitalism from the era of humans because I used to capitalize on my human when I had my human."
Oh yeah.
Like you're like, what? But it's then you like think about it for a second. You're like, it's saying something there a little bit. You gotta admit.
The dialogue is really interesting because a lot of it is very much like you recognize the specific words, but the full sentence feels completely alien. Like it tries to be a coherent thought while also sounding like social media at the same time, and it creates a very interesting effect.
Yeah, and then occasionally you'll get like very coherent sentences given like Ryan Trecartin does a lot of interesting things with like audio mixing. Like people will have their like voices pitched up to almost like Alvin and the Chipmunks levels. You get like overlapping dialogue, stuff that's pitched down, stuff that's overlapping, like clipped. But when you're able to make out like a coherent sentence, it's something like, it's something like, don't try to satisfy me because I'm self-satisfied. Or there's an exchange towards like the end of the movie between Aubrey Plaza and I don't know the other actress's name, but she's like, "Fuck you, you're not real, bitch. You're not real. You're in my system. I fucking own you. Fuck you."
Yeah, I wrote that.
It's like you could listen to like a coherent like if The Sims spoke in English, this is probably what they would sound like.
Yeah.
I wrote that down because I loved that they were saying like, "Oh, I'm not real. No, you're not real."
You're in my system.
It was this layer of like, there's this layer of like, oh, this sounds like maybe, Mean Girls like bitching at each other.
Oh yeah.
But there's also then the other layer of like, everything about this is fake and constructed and feels like self-aware that it's fake and reconstructed. So I love that there's these like lines that have that double meaning of like, you're not real. It's like, yeah, this isn't real because it's filmed and you can see that it's being filmed throughout. How would you describe like the plot of this film? Like, what is the synopsis?
I actually wrote my own with the help of some other like site summaries, but so the official description for Center Jenny that you'll find on like Letterboxd or like Mubi and I think IMDb is that quote, "This film focuses on the life of Jenny, who has, according to many of the other characters, become, quote, too left of center while pursuing her own interests." I would describe it as being ostensibly a film made up of sort of like a series of interconnected vignettes about numerous uniformed girls who are all named Jenny, who make up like several different caste systems and groups of other Jennies. Some of whom are like unassigned proto Jennies, and some of which are like lowly basic Jennies. And all the girls are in like competition with each other to be the Jenny. They're often criticizing and hazing and like calling out those of them who verge too close or too far from the sort of like archetype of a Jenny. And there's I also I don't know if they're like the distributor or like the rights holders for like Ryan Trecartin's films, but organization called like Electronic Arts Intermix, they have a little write-up and they say like everyone is mimicking an ideal and the result among the successful ones is sameness. Gatekeeper Jennies brand underlings as left of center, a designation that other wears proudly, seemingly for alternate positions along this otherwise oppressive, eccentric continuum, and that the film is itself a post-human simulation, emulating constructions of personality and community, mythologized as a source code for social behavior. So a lot of words there, not a very like strong, coherent or succinct summary of what the fuck happens in this movie, because it is again like all of Ryan Trecartin's films kind of like defy a coherent plot structure. They're very avant-garde in that sense, but it's I described it as Ryan Trecartin's Spring Breakers, and I think that just feels very so that feels which was released the same year. Interesting. I mean, I believe 2013 was Spring Breakers as well.
Oh,
So
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, so it's so hard to give us it's not like a movie that has a big coherent like beginning, middle, and end, or like circular character arcs. This isn't like the Suicide Squad where we can run down exactly what happens in the movie, because it's completely non-linear and seemingly exists outside of like space and time as we know it, and it's very meta, like that moment towards the end with fuck you, you're not real.
Okay, I said throw that shit on the floor. I said throw that shit, bitches. I said throw that shit on the floor. Okay, bitches. I said that shit was heavy. So throw that shit on the floor. Whatever. I'm cold. I sense a rainstorm coming from the north.
How can you tell which way is north?
Because my ancestors outlived the war.
Bitches.
Sorry, you can fucking see them too? Is that how you can fucking see them
Joshua, he's just playing a joke on you. No one else can see what you see.
She has to pee. Maybe you say something. I said something.
What? What do you want? I mean, my family goes on like really overnight long vacations. Like, I need something to turn in my homework for me when class is reoccupied. Come on, I can't do it. But don't tell me to talk. What the fuck?
Yeah, I think you're totally like, I totally agree that it's just like a bunch of these, I wouldn't even call them scenes. They're a bunch of locations with characters.
Yeah.
But
And they're all in the same location. Like they're all in this warehouse place that also kind of feels like it's the entire universe.
yeah, well,
Universe.
they keep moving around and it keeps changing, but there are certain like set pieces that they always like. The one Jenny who's I think in a waist, like a sweatshirt that says waist on it, is on that like hammock, and then there's like that big kind of open space where they're like they shout at the Jenny who's like the basic Jenny.
There's the hot tub. He opens on another sort of through line throughout Ryan Trecartin's work is property destruction. Like the movie opens with just a bunch of people just destroying a car.
Yeah, with skateboards.
with a skateboard. It's just, yeah,
but, well, I would say that you're also right that it's not very coherent, but there is one scene that feels the most like coherent plot to me, or not plot, but like there is in-textual explanation that these aren't like real humans. These are what they have become, which there's this, they're taking classes on the human era, and there's a teacher figure, and the teacher explains that they all evolved from animation, and those are their ancestors. So it is like, in text, there are lines that are like, these are the like combination of human society or human traits, and they've learned about humans, and they're talking about human culture, but they aren't humans. They're these things. And there's like a line, I can't remember what I wrote down, but he's like, I don't call you people, like, you're what you've become, or something like that.
Yeah, this is definitely ostensibly a post-humanist sort of text. I think like thinking of them in terms of like, you know, video game NPCs or game characters, or like I mentioned earlier, like Sims, like just having a bunch of fucking Sims talking to each other. But I think it's interesting you bring up the animation a bit, because just to sort of like, I think sort of having watched a good number of Ryan Trecartin films, I think a lot of sort of the understanding or clarity you can get from these is just in terms of like reading it in context with his other films. So Ryan Trecartin actually, and I should say, Ryan Trecartin and his creative collaborator for like over 20 years, Lizzie Fitch, they met in at the Rhode Island School of Design, prestigious RISD. If you had art school friends in high school, you know the pain they went through to apply to RISD. There's like that, you got to do like a drawing of a bike or something, and it was like, everyone wanted to go and get to RISD. It's like the Harvard of art schools. So
I know people who go to RISD, and it sounds like it's the most intensive kind of art school ever. It's the artist of art school.
Yeah. So Ryan Trecartin's, well, he was born in Texas in like 1981. He moved to and currently works out of Ohio. Like he started playing music mostly before moving to Ohio as like a teenager in the 90s, and then got turned on to doing art by like an art teacher in high school. And he met Lizzie Fitch at RISD. They were, I believe, working at a art store at the time. They like hit it off, but Ryan Trecartin really got inspired to pick up a camera and make movies after seeing the Blair Witch Project, which it is mentioned at least twice in this movie, like by name. And that was like, I think a lot of people of that generation were very inspired by the Blair Witch Project in terms of, you know, oh, you can just pick up a camera and make something, you know, with like a, you know, commercial grade camera. Like it really democratized a lot of things. And Ryan Trecartin, in addition to, you know, being a filmmaker, he's also, he and Lizzie Fitch are also sculptors. And you'll see, like, if you watch more of his movies, like you'll see a lot of like sculpture art, like in his work, as well as sculpture art that's like displayed in part of the installations of his work. So he definitely hails from more of an art background than I would say like a professional sort of like, you know, like a film school rigorous like upbringing or training, like, you know, which is very apparent when you watch his stuff, because it's, you know, you get stuff that's like, you know, breaking the 180 rule, stuff that's like taken for gospel in a like film school, as like, these are the technical rules you need to like meet in order to be classified as like a real film. And Ryan Trecartin's clearly, at least in his early works, I would say, you know, being very experimental, making these as, you know, sort of like group projects with his friends. And something I picked up on, because, well, Center Jenny, and I'm sorry for rambling, but I'm just like making connections in my brain.
Yeah.
But Center Jenny was one of 4 films he released in 2013. One of which was an edited version of footage he shot either junior or senior year of high school in like 1999. It was released under the name of Junior War, and it's literally just footage of like his peers in high school, like the school senior week, I believe, just going around and ritually destroying like town property, like beating down like mailboxes, underage drinking, underage smoking, just, like a senior night sort of thing. And I watched that like a couple months ago, and after revisiting Center Jenny, I realized that's kind of like the text for his entire work, in terms of like understanding his style. But yeah, I know we started off talking about animation there, but there's definitely, to sort of close out that long-winded thought, the art and the animation components. Like, I believe he also works in some animation. One of his collaborators, Rhett LaRue, does a lot of the animation for his work. But yeah, this is definitely an art school approved movie in a good way.
Speaking of Junior War, I wasn't able to watch all of it, but you shared an interview that Ryan Trecartin did.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of the things I found interesting is that he like talking about how when he was filming, like he would film like his classmates and stuff when he was, a junior in high school and stuff. Like he just found it so interesting of like how people acted when they were on camera, and kind of taking on personas of like starting to act like they were in films, or they would either not want to be filmed at all. But like that to me is really, really interesting, and I think probably why so many people are like, oh, his works is about social media, because as tech has evolved, it's like he's making these in the aughts, but like even now today there's even more, like everyone has an iPhone or a smartphone that has a really good camera, and people are always filming other people, and what does that say about like how people will act? I think it's definitely, I'm absolutely seeking out more of his work after this.
A lot of it also, it's not only I think a lot of it's on Vimeo. I believe Ryan Trecartin has a Vimeo account, but most of it you can find on YouTube, which is wonderful.
A lot of this film is very focused on the camcorders specifically, because a lot of the characters themselves are holding operating camcorders, and every shot has a sort of double shot of it, with like basically every second of this film has both like a straight on ahead a shot of someone talking to the camera, and then immediately after they'll show you footage of someone filming them talking to the camera, and you can see like the camera guys running around, and also the rest of the cast with cameras. Like
the sort of the numerous sort of like interfaces of screens, especially in Center Jenny. Like there's a moment where one of the Jennies is like, if you don't have your phone in the circle, no one's going to be able to fetch you if you generate too much content. Again, like a total weird like pieced together sentence, but like hearing that, my brain grasped onto the word content. Because again, this is 2013. This is 10 years before, like at least 5 years before sort of the term content becomes loaded with this extra meaning it's taken on in like recent years, where it's it's not just movies, it's content. It's not just a television show, it's content.
Well, I mean, it's so interesting that his stuff is like on YouTube and making it for the online landscape, because that issue around content, this is, now I'm going on a tangent, but like I saw that the first like media that I was most engaged with was YouTube, and that was a discourse on YouTube long before it became like mainstream Hollywood. Of YouTubers would be like, they hate in the trades and stuff like that, be like content creators, or like to get influencer, you know, like deals. Again, influencer is such a loaded term now too, but like it, you know, like it can't be like a passionate, you know, or art piece or entertainment. It has to be content. It has to be like generating things, and just like, so that's so right, that it's so fascinating that like 2013, maybe there's just starting to be those rumblings of people talking about it, and it's in this film. I found it really interesting, not only that you could see not the YouTubers. I found it interesting that not only could you see the different like camera operators, is that they often seem to be dressed in the same outfits.
Yeah, so that's another, I think, especially what Center Jenny is really like a thorough line theme of Center Jenny is just sort of the ways in which people like segregate themselves and create these like fake sort of identity designations, because you got like basic Jennies, you got girls who have not been assigned a level yet, whatever the fuck that means, and like everyone kind of has their own like designated look. Like the Jennies have these like blonde wigs, these the term weaponized pink earmuffs, which I thought was another word I like latched onto. I loved those too.
Well, and there's also razor blades shoved into, or like pieces of glass shoved into the pink earmuffs.
Yeah, and they got like the pink collegiate sweatshirts, and I actually wrote down what some of them say. I think the pink Jenny sweatshirts, they say like audition XXX straight, and then the like, you know, like a heart. There's sweaters that say like the one Sarah Source, where the character Sarah Source wears, says like waist and then waist and like leet speak. There's a shirt that says Witness 360, which calls to mind just like the proliferation of screens and having, you know, to bear witness to every little thing that goes on in recorded life. And there's like another shirt or sweater that says story $ telling. Another thing you can pick a lot from, which is the way this and I especially like makeup and costuming is such a important facet of all of like Trecartin and Lizzie Fitch's, because they do this in collaboration with each other, even though Ryan Trecartin gets like directorial credit, but they conceive of these outfits and the makeup completely together, and it's a like you'll see this in a lot of their other films, like a lot of fashions that and like outfits that very much and this Center Jenny especially too, that kind of invoke the like 2000s aesthetic, like almost like you expect someone to walk out in like lowrider jeans with like a neon pink thong sticking out or something. And another thing you'll see like a lot of like in that same interview I shared with you guys, Ryan Trecartin talked a lot about how his characters are very like gender indifferent. So you'll often see like people in drag, people in costuming and makeup, where you can't really, you know, you can't visibly tell their gender. You're the, you know, very androgynous. Ryan Trecartin will often show up in like crazy like clown makeup, wearing like wigs, playing different characters. Like it also invokes the sense of you know, I was a very hyperactive ADHD child, and something I would do, I would like play out these wild scenarios and like, you know, talking to myself in like almost different voices in like my backyard, like these grand things. And it invokes like a similar sort of feeling of like play and pretend as that.
I thought you were gonna say that, you know, like, oh, as a child, my brain went to thinking of like playing dress up and like just
oh yeah, well, that too. I mean, that's part of sort of the fantasy and the practice of imagination in childhood and action.
yeah, like these are all these like these characters are so, I don't know. I mean, it feels, parody isn't even the right word because it doesn't feel like there's intention clearly in the craft, in the production, but the characters, I think one of the first thing I wrote down in my notes was like parody of Valley Girls, but like there is the way these characters, all these like Jennies talk, it doesn't even seem like they're trying to mimic something. It feels like there is like parody doesn't feel like the right word to me because it's just like this is who these characters are, and they are characters. They're not playing characters, they just are characters, if that makes sense.
Could the word we might be looking for here is, could this be camping identity?
Yeah.
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 See, my madness has a rationality to it here.
Yeah, I'm also reminded of one of the things he said in the interview was something along the lines of how these characters, the reality they exist in is like so distant from our current context that they can just put on a certain identity or style, and it's just this fun thing they do momentarily.
Oh, that reminds me, there was a line, okay, I found it, I wrote it down. The further we move away from humanity, sexism has become the coolest style.
Hold on, I think I wrote down the follow-up line to that. She also, and then the immediate line after is like, I mean, like, the further we all move away from humanity, like, sexism just becomes, like, the coolest style. I think that was what you just said. And it went through my head. But
no, like.
But, yeah, you know what? It's sort of to go back on, you know what I think this is camping in the broadest way possible. I think it's camping sort of, like, white collegiate girl femininity. Between like the sorority signifiers, and I was also, maybe it's just because I've spent a lot of time having like deep womanly conversations with people on like porch swings or on like you know, backyard furniture. You know, you see like there's like there's like a swinging, like a porch swing. There's a hammock,
and it's all indoors. They're all doing that indoors.
Yeah, it's like indoor. It like I think they like they filmed it on what they described a modular maze of sets on a soundstage in Hollywood, and it was like rigged with lights and hydraulics that would allow sort of it able to be like moved and changed around for different projects they were working on. Which you know, there's like that one room that's like completely painted green. It's like, you know, you can almost see someone just making like, you know, just like just filming in there and like keying out stuff. So it's very much clearly a soundstage, but yeah, you get these like weird little details. Like at one point they're like dancing on that sort of like stage platform Aubrey Plaza's character mostly hangs out on, and it's just like covered in flour.
Yeah.
It's like it's the other thing I don't think we've mentioned is like how funny this movie, and especially I think all of Ryan Trecartin's stuff, is in the sense of like the absurdity of it and the absurdity of the actions, the dialogue, and what you're watching. Like, again, this movie opens with a bunch of people like smashing in the windows of a car with skateboards. There's like another one of Ryan Trecartin's movies that ends with people just like throwing a shit ton of stuff into a pool. Things will always be broken in a Ryan Trecartin film, basically.
Yeah, at one point the the Jennies with the neon green bikinis just start breaking these cement bricks.
Oh yeah, Aubrey Plaza. She like, yeah, I think they're like her bricks or something. She like at one point she's like, "Give me my bricks back. I want my bricks back." And like she throws a brick and it's like clearly made out of like styrofoam because it like bounces off one of the other girls' heads. They also made like breakable ceramics like red Solo cups.
Yeah.
Which is another one of those like things that's making me think is it's really like a LARP on like collegiate white femininity, because if you've been to college, you held a red Solo cup at some point in your college career.
Well, the thing that worked out about that was that my parents owned and funded the Earth version of the thing. It was a war. I mean, my parents, they owned and funded the war, at least the Earth version. The war was like, I don't like know a war, but it was happening, and
Crazy. Alright, so I don't think it's gonna look good on you. Does it look good? Sorry.
Someone here does not belong.
someone here. And bitches, that bitches get a prop from everybody. Everybody get that.
There's also a scene where they are surrounding like one of the basic Jennies and covering her in Sharpie, just like scribbling Sharpie on her, which feels very like frat culture or sorority
the basic
culture.
Jenny, I guess she's the sort of closest thing you could call to being like the main character.
Yeah,
of it, I guess.
But because she's in maybe more of the vignettes than other Jennies. That's
she's the one like constant character we kind of keep going back to. Like I think again, these are all like this is just as nothing is concrete in the world of Ryan Trecartin's films, but like she basically starts the movie as an unassigned entity and then moves up to becoming a basic Jenny, and there's like the scene in the middle where under all that makeup it's Jenna Malone from the Hunger Games is you know like hazing her, basically telling her what to say, like this is how you got to become a Jenny, you know, telling her to put on the goddamn like pink sweatshirt and the earmuffs. So it's like she's undergoing like a sorority like hazing ritual, kind of is if you were to take a step back and try to sort of give a plot or a summary of the events of the movie, it almost comes down to being like an elaborate avant-garde like hazing ritual, I guess.
Yeah. And one of them even says there's a line about like, oh, like the only like era of humans class I want to take is about hazing or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Can I just say there's one moment in this that lives rent free in my brain to the like extent that like I'll be at work or doing something like serious and adult like, and it'll just like invade my head and I'll start like muttering it under my breath. It's like Aubrey Plaza. I've posted back when I used to be on Twitter before I got kicked off.
Yeah. R.I.P.
R.I.P. But I would occasionally just like there was like a clip of Aubrey Plaza. I think it's her first scene, if not her like second scene, and it's just like the music's like, and you just hear like Becky. My name's Becky. She's just like, and she's like dancing like she's Elaine from Seinfeld, like doing just like the most like stiff white girl dance you can imagine. And it's again, it's like these moments, like these almost like stimming moments like interwoven throughout the movie. Just like these I can't say the specific sort of like nature of it, but it's like it's like having an invasive thought kind of, and putting that sort of into visual and auditory sort of form. Again, these are all very like it's all very theoretical and hypothetical, but like I think anyone who has ADHD will see a little something in this or any of these movies.
Which is a bit ironic too, because I don't consider myself to have auditory processing issues, but the way this is mixed, I'm like, I can't understand what's being said. But I guess that's also what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's 100% deliberate. I would definitely say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like one of my favorite like vague talking moments was when earlier on Sarah Source is referring to like the orange ladder behind her, and she's like, yeah, there's the ladder and it matches Aubrey Plaza's character.
You know, another thing I noticed, specific, like both Jenna Malone and Aubrey Plaza's characters are also portrayed by different actors at certain points.
Yeah. Like every character
has like a double.
Yeah. Which is
another point for the David Lynch comparison. You know, you got doppelgangers.
I would also say that there's a theme of repetition in the film.
Oh yeah.
Because like almost every line is repeated, and sometimes it's actually like the actors repeating it, and sometimes it's like the same take but from a different angle, because you're like constantly switching all these different camera perspectives, which I'm wondering if there's like then that connection to the conformity and the fact that so many of these like characters are trying to embody the same archetype. They like are all wearing the same outfit. They're all calling themselves Jenny, or like there's also a scene earlier where they're all like, "Oh, I'm Joshua. No, you're Joshua." So
I'm fucking your dad. That was a whole. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, you know, how we learn behaviors or style of speech, it all comes down to repetition. You could also argue, I know Ryan Trecartin kind of like pushed back on, you know, my films aren't really about social media. They're more about like language and how we like learn behavior and whatnot. But, you know, just the repetitive nature of social media, like, you know, you can rewatch a YouTube video or go back and rewatch the same part like time and time again. If you're online, you'll often see the same like repetition of like cycles of discourse over and over again. So there's like it's these a lot of these like the beauty of a Ryan Trecartin film is like at first you're sort of just like completely overwhelmed on every sort of visual, auditory, and sensory experience, but it's playing with a lot of very interesting and coherent ideas when you really look at it and kind of start to pick it apart. Like it's again like David Lynch films, where I think people who are not accustomed to his style will like enter it and they're like, what the fuck was that? But after you've seen like a bunch of David Lynch films, you can watch like Inland Empire and be like, oh no, that has a plot. Like there is a plot there. Like it is about something. And I think a lot of Trecartin's ideas proliferate in his films. You know, repeated themes, repeated sort of visual. I think there's even a couple of I believe I haven't actually seen any of the other with the exception of Junior War, which was just like an edited version of footage he shot in like 1999. I actually haven't seen his other two 2013 films, but I believe they share characters and like props and sets from Center Jenny. I think it was because they were all three of them were probably like shown at an art gallery at the same time, like commissioned the same year. You know, so it's like repetition on all ends, but like, you know, in an artistic way, not in like a lazy way, obviously.
Oh, yeah, because the reputation is building the meaning, and it's building also the emotional experience of the piece.
Yeah, I like really latched on to the little bits of lore that are kind of dropped throughout the film, and I feel like the repetition to me felt like the characters trying to create a context for their existence, and a lot of camp is about context and being aware of context. And so what does that mean to these characters who don't really seem to have much of a context in this world and are just grabbing onto all these signifiers and random phrases, basically.
Which is kind of how people act on social media nowadays. Like, people build their entire identities and their entire like behavior and online personas off of these fragments of things.
Hi, everybody. Please excuse the terrible mic quality. I am having issues with my MacBook detecting my usual mic that I record podcasts on. So sorry that this sounds like I'm coming in through your tin can phone. But yeah, I co-host a podcast called Marvelous or the Death of Cinema, where we watch basically everything that falls under the umbrella of the cinematic universe, your Marvels, your DC, EU, Rest in Peace, your Star Wars, anything that could and can fall under the jurisdiction of being accused as highlighting the death knell of cinema. We watch it so you don't have to, kind of like the Nostalgia Critic. I also write for the Boston Arts Fuse. It's an online arts and culture magazine where I publish movie reviews, so please go check that out. I really like to write about a lot of like queer, independent, female-driven horror genre stuff. So go, if you don't like listening to podcasts, go read those. Or adversely, if you don't like reading, go listen to my podcast. We also have a Patreon where we have bonus content on there, including an episode with Fabiola on Saltburn and the many crimes of one Emerald Fennel. God help us all. It was a great episode. Kind of one of our favorites that we've ever actually recorded. So please go come support us. Come listen to Fabiola and I just tear that movie apart. It's a good time. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. Hopefully this introduces a new world of cinema for you. Ryan Trecartin is an incredibly amazing and interesting filmmaker and artist. His stuff is like nothing else I've ever seen. Incredibly prescient of trends that didn't come into effect until like 10 years after the fact. Everything he's ever done is just insanely interesting. So please, this is me on my hands and knees begging you, go check out his other works. It's incredibly rewarding, or incredibly bizarre if you're not quite used to it. It's a bit of a learning curve and a acquired taste, but I assure you it's a worthwhile investment of your time. Thanks again for listening. Bye.
It's Giving Camp, hosted by Saffron and Hefta-Gaub
and Fabiola Liaño.
Our theme music is written by Harrison Lurie.
And the podcast is edited by Fabiola Liaño.
Follow us on Patreon. Support us on Patreon.
On Instagram, it's Giving Camp Pod. And on Twitter, it's Giving Camp Pod. Without the it's. We're on Patreon at It's Giving Camp Pod. And shout out to our patrons, Nicole Veneto and Paracelsus Kasperi.